And we got to the point where we loved Steve-O so much that we bought a townhouse, we used that for a while, and eventually we decided we wanted to move here. And it has been the best decision that we've made. We're not always here, but this is our home. And as we left Cincinnati, we left behind a legacy that John's dad had started of sponsoring baseball teams. And those baseball players lived with us. Some of them went on to college scholarships and playing in college. Some of them went on to the minor leagues. Some of them went on to the major leagues. And when we came to Steamboat, we both were community volunteers in Cincinnati, and we wanted to do that here. So some of the people who were here then, we actually interviewed different agencies to figure out which ones we wanted to volunteer with. And when we got to the Winter Sports Club, there was a true connection between the Winter Sports Club and the baseball teams that we had worked with in Cincinnati. So we kind of adopted the Winter Sports Club as our new not-for-profit thing we wanted to do. And it has been an adventure all the way. Through that, we became really good friends with the Malacinskis. I think Steve is our ski instructor. Essie is our ski instructor / massage. Wonderful person. And we got to know their kids. I remember when, I think Annika was already born, but I remember when Niklas was born. We have seen these kids grow up over time. And as they grew up, one day we were skiing with Steve, and he said to me, I picked up Niklas last night at Winter Sports Club. He was maybe 7 or 8, and he said to me, Dad, I flew today. All I want to do is fly. It's so cool. And from that day forward, Niklas has been flying. Annika joined a few years later, right with him, flying, skiing, and John and I somehow became engaged in all of that. And love to follow them, love to listen to them, occasionally coach them on things other than skiing and jumping. And they're really part of our family, the whole family is, which brought us to Nordic Combined as a whole. And as we were looking at this year coming up, it's going to be an Olympic year, like many years you all have been through before. This is the beginning for these kids. They came home this week, wrapping up last year. They'll leave here in 2 weeks, starting the next year. And in the meantime, they have to figure out how in the world they're going to fund their program, how in the world they're going to do everything, get to every place they need to be. I am the travel agent, which some days, when Niklas called me, Niklas, where are you? Oh, here he is. He called me, war broke out somewhere, I don't remember where the war was. He called me and said, they told us to go home immediately. Well, there we are trying to find an airplane ticket to get, first of all, an airport, then an airplane ticket to get Niklas home. He had to spend the night in an airport, but they wouldn't let him stay there without a credit card, so there I was trying to give them a credit card so he could spend the night in the hotel at the airport in Frankfurt, I think. So it's been an adventure all the way around. But we wanted to share that adventure with all of you, not from our words, but from our athletes' words, because they have been working on this for years, and it's not just the athletes up in front of you. We have other athletes in the room and their coaches. So we just wanted to bring their world to your world, because at some point in time, we hopefully this year will have somebody in the Olympics from Steamboat, and you all will have the opportunity to say, I met them. I know who they are. I can cheer for them. So, but we couldn't do anything that we do here without the Winter Sports Club. We have a new year-and-a-half-year-old director of the Winter Sports Club. Brian, you want to come up here and say hello? Brian's going to talk just for a minute about the Winter Sports Club and the relationship with Nordic Combined.
Thanks, Carrie, and I will be brief. I don't want to take much time away from the main event, hearing from these athletes. But I did want to say, first of all, thank you to many of you who have supported the Nordic Combined program over the years here at Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club. What an amazing tradition it is. Todd Wilson, who's been running the program, there you go, for 30 plus years. As Carrie already mentioned, the starts the first moment that a kid goes off those jumps. We have the largest jumping program in the world in terms of how many kids get introduced and do the sport here. And then, of course, because of that, we also have many kids ultimately making up our national team and going off and competing on the world stage, and we're very proud of that. So thank you for continuing to support that tradition here in Steamboat. I want to ask you directly to support this effort to make sure that these kids and a national team can get funded to continue to meet their dreams and goals going into an Olympic year. That's a symbiotic relationship. Our program is a huge part of American Nordic Combined, and so our job day in and day out is to keep our program going and continue to develop athletes like this and all the athletes that are in our program. And tonight it's about making sure that we can continue to fund the national team going into the Olympic year. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Congratulations to all the current athletes and the future athletes and the past athletes like Johnny that have made this sport such a great tradition here in Steamboat. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce John Moulton, our Chief Operating Officer, and I think he's going to run the panel tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. What an amazing opportunity we have tonight to hear from 4 really incredible athletes. And I'm going to introduce them outside again here tonight just to let you know a little bit of what we're in store for tonight. To my far left, Johnny Spillane. Johnny's got flag on the wall here in Olympian Hall. First American Olympic medalist in history. He's got a world champion to his name and 3 Olympic medals in his coffers. And really an amazing story that we'll get into with some of his background that these younger athletes have had a chance to look up for and really develop that steamboat tradition for Nordic Combined athletes. On the other end of the table, Niklas Malacinski represents the future on the men's side for Nordic Combined. Just put his second year in, finishing in the top 30 in the World Cup rankings at the end of the season. A phenomenal season for Niklas. He scored his best ever career World Cup result this season back in November, cracking into the top 13. He is on his way, so we're excited to have Niklas here. Right next to Niklas, his sister Annika is forging a path in the sport that is unique and really awesome. And while she's forging an athletic path, she's also forging a story for the sport and pushing hard for women in the sport of Nordic ski jumping. She too has put back-to-back strong seasons in 2 seasons in the top 15 at the end of the season in the World Cup rankings. So we're excited to have Annika here tonight. And next on in the middle, Alexa Brabec this season, a breakthrough season, a top 10 overall World Cup event. She's 9th at the end of the season, the World Cup series. Stacked up her best ever World Cup results of the 4th and 5th in Seefeld, Austria this year. And really impressive, especially considering the depth when we look at the sport right now. 6 nations represented in women's Nordic Combined in the top 10 in the World Cup standings. And Alexa was right in that mix, having a fantastic season. So we're going to kick things off with these amazing athletes, and I think we'll do a little bit of handing of the mic as we go around. But I want to start with you first, Lex, and just talk about when you look back at this season, what moment, big or small, stuck with you as a highlight for the year?
I think like one of the highlights of the year this year for me was the World Championships in Trondheim. Norway has become like second home to us because we were partnered with the Norwegians, and the atmosphere in Trondheim was amazing, and I got a career best result of 4th place, which was really cool.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here. I would say that my favorite moment of the season was definitely World Championships. It was my 3rd World Championships proud we've ever had come support just Nordic sports in general. And we also had 5 women on the women's Nordic Combined Team that came to the World Championships, and that was huge. And that was all just for the United States. So I had so much fun with the young girls that came up, and then it was so awesome to see Alexa take that jump where she placed 4th place. It was genuinely one of the coolest experiences. So,
Gotta say, World Championships also for me, awesome highlight. Also with Alexa's result, I think the atmosphere there was just amazing. Unlike anything I've experienced before, competing in front of that many people. I would also have to say Ruka in Finland. It's always fun to kick off the season. It was quite cold there and really gives you a shock, gives your body a shock that, okay, the season's now starting. And then, I would say I had my career best there, so can't discount that. I guess that's part of why I liked it so much.
Awesome, thanks. Johnny, I don't know if you had a highlight from this year, but I was going to go to the next question for you, just kind of going back in time a little bit and trying to remember, but because it's fresh in mind for the other 3 at the table, what was the hardest adjustment moving from a junior athlete to competing at the World Cup level?
I think the big thing is understanding that it's going to take more time than you probably think it's going to. I think that everybody has aspirations to move up to the World Cup and have immediate success. That certainly can happen for some people. It wasn't really the case with me. It took a few years to find that success, and just having the patience to let it take the time it needs to take in order to be successful, I think was probably the main thing.
Excellent. Lex, you're right in it right now. Describe it for you as you're in it right now.
I think one of the hardest parts of like moving from being a junior like up to the World Cup was like leaving home. Like the community here is really great and lots of friends, my family, like I know all of the coaches and athletes. And then moving like across the world to a totally different country, away from my family, away from my friends, and having to like kind of rebuild a community where I can like be supported and then train hard and compete and everything was pretty difficult, but I feel like I'm getting there now where I have a great community around me and supporting me, and a lot of you good people here in this room are about that, which is awesome.
I would definitely agree with Lex on that. When I started competing internationally, I think it was some of the hardest times, just being so homesick and feeling like you had the fear of missing out of everything that was happening at home. And especially, there's a lot of sacrifices that you have to take as an athlete. Maybe you have to go to bed a little bit earlier and skip the party, or wake up early to go training. So there's so many sacrifices that you have to make to be at the level that we all are at. But definitely those first couple years were very hard to be competing in Europe and being away from home in this community. But yeah.
I would say that just to a certain extent in the club, at the club level, your life does revolve around the sport, but even more so when you're an adult. Every aspect of your life, especially in Nordic Combined, with the 2 disciplines, every ounce of your energy goes into this sport nowadays. Most professional sports, they follow the law of 80-20. 80% full on, 20% let off, like go do what you enjoy. But with the 2 disciplines, that's not really possible. So I feel that it turns into 99.9% of your energy into this sport. So I think that's been the biggest hurdle to jump through when I was 16.
Excellent. I hear a lot about hard work and sacrifice, and certainly the sport of Nordic Combined is a really unique sport. And hopefully everybody in this room, even Steamboat community's got a pretty good understanding of Nordic Combined as a sport because it is so unique. But for you as athletes, what's one thing that you wish people understood about the sport of Nordic Combined, especially at the elite level?
Honestly, I would kind of just repeat what I just said. It's like, it takes a lot more, and I think that people need to understand that we're using two different muscle fibers. When you specialize in cross-country skiing, you're only training your slow twitch muscles, and for us, we want to be as quick as possible, but at the same time as slow as possible. So it's a whole balance.
I think that both the cross-country skiers and ski jumpers almost don't take us seriously because it's kind of said that, like, okay, well, if you're not good at ski jumping, then you're going to do Nordic Combined, or if you're not good at cross-country skiing, you're going to do Nordic Combined. And I think it's just so wrong because at the end of the day, we work so hard in both sports. And yes, we might not win if we go compete with the ski jumpers or the cross-country athletes, but we have to split two sports and be able to balance both of them and do it correctly to the point where you're the best at both ski jumping and cross-country skiing.
Yeah, I think similar thing, just the contrast of the two sports is pretty different, and so the training is pretty different, and it's a lot harder than you may think to like balance like both parts of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say just really the pure amount of hours that you have to put in, whether it's on the cross-country side or the ski jumping side, and then really how those really work against each other. Every time you go out cross-country skiing, it's detrimental to your jumping and vice versa. So finding that balance and finding, it's always something where trying to determine, okay, which aspect of the sport do I want to work on today that's going to make me better moving forward, and trying to find that balance. And with all the testing and all the sports scientists and all those people working together to try and find that balance because it is so difficult.
Excellent.
Yeah, I look here and I look at the amount and the volume of training that you do to be successful in two completely different sports that are merged together in one sport. It's pretty incredible. It's a long list, it's year long, and it's such a high degree of commitment. It might not be as well known in the US, certainly it's popular here at Steamboat. We love when we see our competitions on the hill here, the big crowds that come out in Steamboat, but it's nothing compared to what you see in Europe. Could you talk a little bit about, and maybe let's start with you, Alexa, what it's like to compete in Europe, what the crowds are like, what the scene is like there in Europe for anybody that hasn't experienced the event with European culture?
I don't know, like, I think in Steamboat there are parts that are pretty comparable, like, there's kids here that are, like, very excited and stuff, but I think one of the coolest events that we go to where you really experience the, like, European love of the sport is in Spillane, Germany, where there's just tons and tons of, like, elementary school kids that at the end of the race are, like, coming out of the finish area and they're just like, can I have your hat? Can I have your gloves? Like, give me anything you have. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I only have one hat. So I think that's, yeah.
I would say also just not a lot of people in America know what Nordic Combined is, and sometimes that's a bit frustrating because I get very interesting questions if I'm flying off the ramps going into the water, or just really interesting questions where they just have no idea what the sport is. And that's something that's really cool is us being based in Norway, Nordic Combined and ski jumping, cross-country skiing, all Nordic sports are very, very big in Scandinavian countries, as well as Europe. So the acknowledgement and the just knowledge of the sport is so much higher. It's almost like it's their heritage in some sense. But I would also agree with Alexa, some of the coolest World Cups are definitely in Spillane, Germany. Those volunteers do an amazing job because it's sad to see our winters go, and that's something that us winter athletes see. But when we arrive, it's a field of grass, and overnight, these volunteers and workers are able to get a 2.5K course going for us for the World Cup. So it's super awesome, and it's really in the middle of nowhere, so we all wonder where the hell these people are coming from. But showing off Germany and definitely some other places in Germany and the World Championships too was probably the biggest crowd I've ever competed in.
Yeah, I would say the culture of skiing is a lot bigger in Europe, so it's nice when you don't have to explain what your sport is to someone when you're at a certain levels where it's not a completely unknown sport, especially in Europe. So it's nice to have that break from having to explain to someone from Florida, like if you're jumping on grass or into the water or how many flips you do. So I really appreciate that part about Europe and the culture there, and just the skiing heritage, like Annika said.
I'll add one more thing. Also, just the accessibility to watch Nordic sports is crazy cool to see in Europe. You just flip one channel and you see anything from biathlon, ski jumping, Nordic Combined. Whereas in the US, it's so much harder to find. You have to subscribe to Peacock or make a sign up to a website. So I think that's something that we should definitely try to change in the future, to not only be seeing football and basketball and hockey and seeing these other sports.
What was your experience, Joni?
What was the question?
Just the feel, what it's like with the crowds in Europe and the energy. And
No, I was pretty fortunate to compete in many world championships and Olympics, and especially some of those bigger Nordic nations. I think we were competing in front of like 65 or 70,000 people at the world championships in Oberstdorf on the cross country track. So I mean, just having those big crowds and having all that enthusiasm, and it's a big party, it's a big show, it's a big carnival, and it's a ton of fun to compete with those types of crowds.
yeah. Cool. We've got any of you that have been out here on the jump flats or at the rodeo grounds cheering for these athletes, you're a part of that here, because we might not be able to draw some of the crowds we're talking about here. We've got some great crowds and steamboats. Keep coming out. That is huge to support these amazing athletes. We talked a little bit, it's a long season, it's a long time spent in Europe. Back home now, when does training for next season actually start? And how do you approach kind of that full year, the early months of training? What does that look like? We'll start with you, Niklas.
Probably not the right person to ask, because I kind of jumped straight back into training the day after the season. But usually right around now is when you start structured training, is when you start incorporating the intervals, your strength program again. And this phase of the year, you're doing a lot of volume. So that's my favorite type. You can go out in the mountains and explore for hours and like go cross skiing on the pass. Steamboat's such an amazing place to be in the springtime because there's everything here. I love to diversify my training throughout the spring, do as many sports as possible, and then start specializing throughout the summers. And especially when I go to Europe or Norway, that's when you're stuck in roller skiing and swimming in the gym, so it can get monotonous. So I really try to get everything out of Steamboat as I can.
Yeah, Niklas was not joking when he said he went right back into it. He went to the Madeira Islands and ran like 100 kilometers, and then went to Cuba and biked 100 kilometers a day, basically. So, but that's not what my off season looked like. Mine was mostly on the beach and surfing. So that's like my ideal need a break from the 9 months of training. But yeah, I would say, same as Niklas, you don't really ever stop training. I stopped filling out my training log, which was nice, great to do. But staying active and the kind of want to be active is how my off season looks. So, going for a run or a hike or doing whatever you want to do. But then actually my training program starts tomorrow. So wish me luck.
Yeah, on a similar plan, lot more like alpine skiing and backcountry skiing because I think that's really fun. And then May starting back up a training plan. And this year we're following more of the Norwegian style where most of us are heading back over to Norway in May to start jumping again on plastic. And we'll jump May through June, and then we'll come back and kind of take a break from jumping in July and then start back up in August.
I'll save Johnny from
I was
this
gonna say, I won't be doing any of that.
I mean, fly fishing counts for something, right? But I'll let you kick off this next one, Johnny, because it is an Olympic year this year. So as we kick off next season, the Olympics will be back on. I want to ask, to get your perspective, Johnny, 3 times you were preparing for the Olympic Games. And how does an Olympic year feel different preparing? How does it feel different preparing for an Olympic year? What is that like? And we're going to get some different answers as we go across the table because the Olympic opportunity in Nordic Combined right now is only for the men. So I do want to get some perspective as we go through this question, just how it relates to the sport from our women at the table as well. We'll start with you, John.
As far as preparation for the Olympic seasons would go, I really wouldn't try and do anything extra or above and out of the ordinary. We always felt like we were in pretty good positions, getting podiums on World Cups with, a good amount of consistency. And it was always the guys that tried to put too much weight and too much pressure on those Olympics that struggled the most and maybe didn't have the results they wanted. For me, it was really about relaxing and enjoying the moment. I mean, it's a really special thing to go do, a really special place to go compete. And then, for me, about those big events, I would always do my best at the biggest events. So like for me, World Cups and stuff like that, I would really get kind of bored doing them. But then, World Championships, Olympics, that's what got me excited. And, I would never really get nervous for those big events, but I would be excited. And I think that's kind of what led to, having some good results at those biggest events.
That's down to Niklas.
Yeah, I would second that. Ideally, you don't want to add any extra pressure to the year. Naturally, there is some with the stigma of the Olympics in the U.S. especially. But the goal is to not change anything, keep up the consistency. And something I got taught really early on is you don't want to shoot for the Olympics, you want to shoot for the result you want at the Olympics. So that, for me, that takes pressure off the Olympics. It makes it more result-oriented to where technically you should be getting the same exact results on the World Cup as you should be in the Olympics. It's not like I want to perform my absolute best at the Olympics. Well, that would be great. I want to do great the entire season and then show the consistency to then prove that I am at that level, even at the highest value events.
So many of you may know that the women are not allowed to compete at the Olympics. So it's the only discipline that doesn't have men and women competing, which is a big bummer for us. And I don't think it's really going to hit us until we go into the Olympic season, being excluded out of that. Because at that point, we're not even looking for the results, or it's just like we're not even allowed to be in that event. But that's what we're doing to try to raise awareness to it. And I have my short film premiering at the Wild Horse Cinema on Sunday. I had a really cool opportunity to work with the film crew that came from LA, and we filmed for 3 days in Trondheim, Norway, just really putting the message out there and showing that the women work just as hard as men, and putting pressure on the International Olympic Committee to add us for 2030.
I'll keep it with you for either of you, Alexa or Annika, and then we'll go to the guys. But why do the Olympics hold such a special place? Why is it so important? And so important that you're not getting access, and it's so important for you guys that are in there.
I think there's kind of 2 sides to this. Like, the Olympics are held at a really high standard, especially in the US. Like, they are the big event that everybody talks about. If you say you're an Olympian, people recognize that. If you say you compete on the World Cup, people are like, oh, like, cool, but Olympian is like, whoa. So there's like that, and like, it is just an insane event. But on the other side, the USOBC has a lot of like programs and support for athletes that are eligible to compete in the Olympics. And since Women's Nordic Combined is not in the Olympics, that means that we are eligible for a lot of grants and other programs to help support us. So that means that even more financial burden falls on us as athletes, and which is difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, I also think that when the decision came out a couple years ago in the summer, where they ended up denying Women's Nordic Combined, it was because the Olympics are so hyped up. It was almost a thought like, okay, what do I do now? Do I quit? Do I change to ski jumping? So it just shows how big the Olympics are, especially in, I feel, the American eyes. As Alexa said, you're not really recognized as a high-level athlete unless you're shooting for the Olympics or have been at the Olympics. So definitely makes it also harder to find sponsorship. My brother is able to sell an Olympic dream while I don't even have the opportunity. So it's something that we're fighting really hard for to get our program in as well.
Niklas, it's coming up for you. What are your thoughts when you do have the opportunity?
Kind of as I expressed before, it's theoretically you don't want any extra pressure. Naturally there is, and especially this year our quota got cut to 2 spots, so only 2 people get to go to the Olympics instead of 5 this year. So it's a ton of extra pressure. But all you really can do is keep up the consistency. And yeah, on this note, it's very frustrating for me as well as a brother to see. I feel like it was almost a childhood dream for us to. We're both athletic, so why not shoot for standing on top of an Olympic podium with my sister? And that's not possible right now. And that's why I think pushing for 2030 is pretty important.
Agreed. We're all pushing for it. Certainly, I think in terms of for us spreading the word about Nordic Combined, creating more fans for Nordic Combined, coming out here and supporting our local events is a great place to start. Supporting the sport, what we will get to see, the men when they compete in 2026, but supporting the women as well, going through it. Some of the good signs that are out there, the Junior Worlds that were hosted last year, a great diversity in top finishers there. I mentioned the 6 different nations represented in the top 10 of the World Cup right now. The women's sport is truly emerging, and we really hope to see it get over the line with the IOC and become part of the Olympic sport. But this recognition, I appreciate your honesty, and I can see the frustration to celebrate the work, and you're working just as hard as everybody else, and we're not going to get a chance to see it during that Olympic period, but during the World Cup, let's all be following these fine women and the other women from the USA Nordic Combined Team in supporting their path this year. Let's lighten up a little bit, and I'm curious, just in these competitions, everyone has their quirks. I'm curious if you have any pre-competition rituals or routines or superstitions that help get you through the World Cup season.
Can't say I have anything too crazy, but I've noticed I always do left boot first, so that's, I time my left boot first, I put it into the binding first. That's just how the natural order of things, and God forbid if I change that up.
I've expressed this before, but I actually started working with hypnosis a couple of years ago. And before every single World Cup weekend, I've had to throw out Alexa out of the room many times because I'm about to start floating in the air and being hypnotized. helps to just like take that time to meditate and visualize and just get ready for the World Cup weekend that's ahead. And then in that hypnosis, I basically find this place that makes me feel calm and confident and it's peaceful. So sometimes when it gets real overwhelming and I'm at the top of the ski jump and feeling that crazy, uncomfortable feeling in your chest and your stomach, all the nerves, and I like to just sit down and find that place that I found in the hypnosis session. So that's been something that's really helping me. It's not just the physical, it's also the mental. So.
Yeah, I don't really have any crazy things that I do, so yeah, I don't really know.
Is there Johnny? What are Johnny's?
Yeah, I really only had one. I would wear a brand new pair of socks for every competition that I did. So over the years, I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds of pairs of socks. But yeah, that was the only real superstition that I had was new socks. That was for every competition.
Yeah. A little bit harder to hand out all the U socks to those German kids that were asking for them in the competition, right? So no one does this alone. You need a support network in the sport. Can you share what kind of support network has had the most important impact on you, Johnny, and Carrie's back in your time through the club, all the way up to the national team and to the Olympics and for everybody else?
Yeah, I think that for us, I was really fortunate to be born and kind of grew up skiing with a group of guys that were all about the same age, and we were all, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think we were a pretty talented group. And the ski team at the time, this was in 1997 or 96, took us all to Lake Placid for a whole summer, and this is what kind of started the way that these guys are doing this now with doing these base camps in Norway. They took our group, and there was 10 of us. And then we started training together, not as fellow competitors, but really as teammates. We really started approaching it differently, where we looked at the sport and we said, as long as one person in this group is having success and getting good results, the whole group is going to get better. So we never needed, 3, 4, 5 guys all at the highest level all at the same time, but we always needed one person, because that's what made our whole group get better. And so from a quite young age, I was able to be a part of this group, and we had tremendous success at most levels, like starting off at what the time was World Cup E's, then moving on, getting medals at World Juniors back-to-back years, in team events, which had never been done, individual medals, and then working on to the World Cup. And because this one group all kind of grew up together, we all kind of shared in each other's successes, and I think the whole group got quite a bit better because of that.
Could you say the question?
About your support network, what who's part of your support network that's really important to help you have the success you've had?
I think coaches have been a huge part. Starting with the coaches here at the Winter Sports Club, Garrett, Carl, Todd, they've all been great coaches that have kept me in it and made me love the sport. And then now that we continued and partnered with the Norwegians, I've found some great coaches that I work with on the Norwegian team that continue to help me get better and everything. Also, I think my family is one of the most important parts of our sport network. My parents, obviously my mom is really taking on this whole Nordic Combined USA thing, and I don't think I'll be sitting up here without her right now, so yeah.
Yeah, I would say also just the community of Steamboat. I mean, I would have never started ski jumping if it wasn't for the 4th of July jumping and jamming, watching my brother fly off those ski jumps. That got this crazy idea in my head to want to do it as well. So I would say community, obviously. My mom and dad have been a huge part of it as well. It's not easy to put 2 kids through Winter Sports Club, so that was a real privilege. And coaches, obviously, we've had the honor to work with Norwegian staff and coaches this is our 3rd year going into it. So that has been than just team, being supportive of each other and, fighting for the top.
I would say for me, it was a little harder with the team aspect that Johnny was saying. When I first made the team, Taylor Fletcher was my teammate. He's more than 10 years older than me. Next person down was 7 years older than me, and the closest to my age is 5 years older than me. So I never felt like I had a spot on the team as the young rookie. So going through that, I think the community, especially growing up in Steamboat, it's been amazing, such an amazing support system, as well as parents, that goes without saying, and then you get great people like Hayden who are helping put on this event as well.
We kind of hit on, I've got one more question, and then we can open up to a few audience questions before, if you have any, before we wrap up this part. But I'm curious, we've got 3 of the top current Nordic Combined athletes in the world up here, top representatives for our country in the sport, a 3-time Olympic medalist and world champion. You've navigated through the sport. How have you navigated pain for all of this for your seasons? And what was it, from bridging the gap to a club athlete up to the team where you are right now? And then where you are right now, what does that look like? If you could share a little bit about how that works.
As far as pain goes, I think you kind of learn to enjoy it in a little bit of a sick way. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I've learned to engrave into my, I guess, training.
So pain and pain, they're probably one and the same in this question as it relates, but I was trying to get to the financial impact and how you navigated that, both through that. But they're probably, kind of together.
Okay, that's my bad answer. So obviously it requires a lot, but I think it goes back into the whole support system, as you can't really do it without the people around you. It's simply impossible without the support system. So
We do 2 sports, so that's paying for 2 different types of skis, 2 different types of boots, 2 different types of uniforms, which it is really hard financially. So sponsorships are very, very important, and just having a very supportive community, because as Niklas said, it's really not possible without you guys. Looking at the rest of the world, most countries have government support. So meaning that either the athletes get paid by the government or they get support by the government. Unfortunately, for all athletes in the US, that is not the case, which makes it very hard for us.
It is definitely hard to cover all the expenses and things. I know there are sacrifices that I've made in terms of going to camps or equipment of maybe doing the lesser so that I am able to afford the sport, because I don't have the funding to always have the best equipment or be going to the highest camps. And when I come home in the spring, I am trying to work to make money to pay for the rest of the season, because when I'm competing I can't work. And I try to get sponsorships that I try to do, but a lot of it is difficult.
We were in a completely different situation. What these guys are having to go through. We had the Olympics in 2002 in Salt Lake. That spurned a lot of funding for almost all the teams. So I grew up being in a very, very different situation than what these guys are having to go through. Mine was a much easier path.
Were there any questions from the audience? We've got a few more minutes before I turn the mic over here. But don't think you all have any questions of these amazing athletes up here, either individually or for the group?
this a little bit earlier with your mental preparation, but I'm curious what your mental preparation is, all of you, and what you think separates you from your peers.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is in the brain. It's completely mental. So it's important to have a good ritual and all that. So I mean I've gone through extensive phases of like what works for me and all that, and I think finding more of a holistic approach like hypnosis is a great strategy, and there's also visualization is the one I use the most as far as meditation goes as well. So it's all kind of I categorize it as one big category of meditation. So just finding that flow state, finding that zone that you can pretty much only find when you're on the bar before competing. So.
Yeah, I think a couple years ago I had a really horrible season, and I think it had nothing to do with my physical state. I was in very great shape, but it was all in my head. At that time, I think I was sitting on the bar about to take my competition jump with a 190 heart rate. And almost like at the verge of like can't remember the jump. I was so nervous, and that's after the season I just decided that I was going to do everything in my power to be at the top, whether that was physical or mental. And once I started doing hypnosis and it gave me the results that I was looking for, I connected how important it is to use the mental side as well. And it's not physical for athletes, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of athletes do this too, but I do work with sports psych to like go talk through things that are going on, and I found that to be super helpful for just keeping good vibes, I guess. And then I think one of the like biggest mental aspects that I have found to be like I don't know like the best word, but like a benefit for on the jumping side is just having like a go for it attitude. Sometimes when I'm on the jump hill and I talk to lots of other like athletes, you get into this like, I am trying to make this change, and then you sit down and you're like, oh wait, like I'm not actually like really going for it, and being able to like recognize that and then be like, okay, like I'm 100% going to do this like way more than I need to make this change, and it works. Then you make the change and you're like, oh my gosh, yes. And I think that a lot of athletes do get really caught up with that, and it's been, yeah.
When I was skiing, we were very fortunate, especially in the latter half of my career, that we had a sports psych guy that would travel with us full time. So he'd be on the road with us every single day, and half the time we weren't even talking about skiing. You'd be talking about girlfriends or wives or kids or whatever it was. But just having that person there to kind of ease the tension in the room, to put you in the best mental state to go compete at a very high level, and especially at the biggest events, the Olympics, World Championships, those types of things. Having that person on your team, at least for me, was invaluable. I would talk to him every single day, whether it was for 5 minutes or 5 hours. But I spent time with him every single day, just talking through the day, talking through the plan for the next day, coming up kind of with a mental game plan for how I wanted to approach that next competition. So for me, again, this is all stuff that money buys, These sports psychologists to travel with us for the entire season, it costs a lot of money. And it's something these guys unfortunately don't really have access to, where I was very fortunate to have access to it.
Yeah, great question. It just makes me think this sport, the combination of the couple on the bars, sitting at the top of the in-run, on the bar, looking down that jump, looking down at the crowd, below through your tips, down that chute, there's no way out. And combining that mentally with getting through the pain cave at the end of the cross-country leg, after that, it's really, truly amazing. Got one more question.
Oh, I was just wondering what changed over the 20 years when you said their situation is nothing like yours.
Great question. And that's why you're here tonight.
Well, the reality is it all comes down to results. It comes down to results at the big events. You can do well in the World Cups, but getting the results at the Olympic level and at the World Championship level, that's what forever drove funding. And so when my group of guys all kind of retired, we had a few years where we didn't have great results. You know, we were excited for guys to get points on the World Cup where, you know, we were out there trying to win every single time. And so for us, the U.S. ski team looks at that and says, you know, not necessarily believing in maybe the future talent of the athlete pool that the U.S. has. And I think they were completely wrong about that. But, you know, that's how they approach it. They want to pay, they want us to get results for the money that they're spending. And so after my group of guys all kind of moved on and retired, there was that lack of good results for a number of years, and that's when it really started to slip, and that's when the ski team, you know, eventually dropped the sport from their programming.
Also, like, recently, like, Nordic Combined is a super old sport. It's like an original Olympic sport. And there's been a lot more new sports getting added, like a lot of freestyle disciplines. And so, like, I think that, like, the U.S. ski team is picking up more and more things. They just picked up, like, paired skiing and things. So they are spreading their funding and choosing the